Welcome back. I'm so sorry, we had a little glitch there. We may have lost you. We are broadcasting live from Christie's in London. I'm Jacky Klein, and I've been showing you round the Impressionist and Modern sales upstairs. While we had our little technical hiccup, we have come downstairs to have a quick look, to finish off, at the highlights from the contemporary sales, which are happening next week. Now, from a distance, there is a little picture over there of a chicken, another chicken who has lost his life, I'm afraid. And it looks almost like it might be a Dutch still life painting, and you might say, Jacky, what are you doing? This is supposed to be the contemporary art sale. But in fact, not Dutch still life, not even a Chardin painting, but the artist who drew this amazingly finely detailed image of a dead chicken was very directly inspired by Chardin. This is the young Lucien Freud, the British painter, who made this work in his early 20s. In fact, in the year 1944 that he would have his very first solo exhibition. And come in as close as you need to, because the detail here is absolutely exquisite, and it does have something of an old master feel about it. From the sharpness, you can tell that Freud was looking absolutely painstakingly closely, almost like a surgeon would, at his subjects. We know that in the 1940s, at this early moment of his career, he was drawing dead fish and monkeys and birds and rabbits and everything from the kind of sharp, pointy beak all the way down to these really vicious claws. Just shows how incredibly intently he was looking. I just think it's an absolute jewel of a picture, and it has not ever been seen in public before. It's been in a private collection and out of the hands of the public for 70 years. So if you get a chance to come down here to central London, please do. If there's no way you're going to get to central London, do post in, tell us right now where you're tuning in from. We would love to know. Because there's 2 or 3 other pictures I wanted to finally show you here. And this is one of them. I mentioned at the beginning that I am interested in a lot of these pictures, including this one, seem to blend the boundaries between figurative art, representational art, and complete abstraction. And again, from a distance, this mass of swirling lines looks like it is just that, a sort of fusion of colour and light. But actually, again, when you come in closely, you start to notice that there are dozens of little faces, heads of people, many of them wearing helmets, all over the surface of this wonderful picture. There's a ladder going up here at the left that looks like it's heading towards this young boy. The title of this painting is The Fire, and it's from 1944. And it's a painting by a now relatively unknown Portuguese artist whose name was Maria Helena Vieira da Silva. She was born in 1908 in Lisbon, and she moved to Paris in her 20s, and pretty much, apart from a short stint again in Lisbon, and this moment, the moment of this picture when she was in Brazil during the Second World War, apart from those times, she was in Paris all of her life. Now, The Fire is an incredibly important picture for her, because it shows, in a way, her desperate isolation, her desolation, her frustration being in Brazil, away from the Europe that she loved during the war, and also, of course, the torment and the horrors of war itself. If not directly in an actual historical incident, then certainly in this wonderful and evocative and slightly terrifying picture of a fire consuming a city. It has the influences, I think, of Cubism, of Futurism, but also in these wonderful drippy sort of figures, and the kind of ecstatic quality of the painting has something of El Greco, I think. Vieira da Silva, as I said, not very well known now, but she was in her day very much lauded. Peggy Guggenheim, the famous collector and dealer, showed this artist in her famous New York gallery, and in the 1960s she was recognised in France and given, she was the very first woman to be given the honour of the National Medal for the Arts. I think an incredibly important picture then, if by a relatively unknown artist. Over to a better known artist, an artist who shares my name but alas is no relative. This is a wonderful, well, is it a painting or is it a sculpture, by Jacky Klein. This is the blue sponge relief, and it's from 1959. And what I wanted to point you to is the fact that, again, this sort of blurs boundaries. There is a canvas at the very back, you can just about see it, but it's so completely encrusted by these blue sponge sort of incrustations, that actually this has come off the wall, it is a relief, it's becoming sculpture. Jacky Klein, as many of you will know, was probably most famous for patenting a colour blue. He called it, specifically, it was his Jacky Klein blue. Why blue? Well, because actually, very much like Kandinsky, he was obsessed by colour, and he felt that colour was a way to point us towards the absolute, the infinite edges of the universe. Blue was the colour, of course, it is the colour of the sky, of the sea, and it has this sense of infinity. What's interesting here too is it's very much a process picture. Klein was looking for a way to sort of remove his own hand from the process of making and to move away from that idea of the gesture that Picasso, for example, was so famous for. And he started to use sponges, which he would dip in his trademarked blue paint and then use for the canvases. And it was only when he saw a group of these sponges fully drenched in the wonderful rich blue colour that he suddenly realised that they were themselves, they could themselves be the subject of his art. I think a really wonderful and important relief. Very unusual to see that. Now, I want to finish today's brief tour here at Christie's. We said that a lot of what we've talked about today is about the nude in art. A lot of it's about that fine line between abstraction and figuration. And this picture, I think, sort of encompasses all of that. It's called The Homecoming, and it is a wonderful painting by the artist Cecily Brown, a British artist. She made this in just 2015, and it signified, as its title suggests, her return home to Britain. Cecily Brown studied at the Slade School in the 1990s, and she grew up with that generation of artists, the young British artists, the YBAs. But unlike them, and I think you can see that immediately from this picture, she wasn't interested in irony, she wasn't necessarily interested in sort of big bravura installation works that might shock the viewer. She was, and still is, a very serious, very earnest painter in a much more traditional mould. In fact, like Picasso, looking back to other artists, particularly people like Hieronymus Bosch. And what we have here is a swirl of rather wonderful fluorescent colours. There are amazing patches of complete abstraction, particularly in the lower part of the canvas. But then, when you start to look closer, you see what might be a leg suddenly emerging in a flesh tone. And as you follow up the picture, you see that there is a figure emerging here. Cecily Brown, as I said, in a way rejected the young British artist, and a year after she finished at the Slade in 1994, she came second in a competition, an art competition, and her prize was a ticket to New York. She basically got on the plane and until 2015 didn't come back. She lived there for 20 years or so. And really, I think this brings us sort of full circle, if you like, back from that exuberant late Picasso to another equally exuberant nude painting. But here what you have is a woman artist, in a way taking all the kind of machismo of artists like Picasso or of the abstract expressionists and turning them to her own sort of feminist, erotic ends. That has been a very whirlwind tour of an amazing series of sales here, 8 sales coming up at Christie's in the next couple of weeks. Do let us know what you've enjoyed most today. We would love to hear back from you. And if you can, come down to central London to take a look. Particularly the contemporary works I've whizzed through here are just a smattering of what's going to be on show from next week, including Warhol's, a wonderful picture by Gursky, some Bacon paintings and all sorts of other things. I am Jacky Klein. I've been delighted to take you on this tour. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a